It's time for Answers Party Line today for your Wednesday, July the 8th, 2015. Answers Party Line today brought to you by CHI Albany Area Health, Wimmer Opticians of St. Cloud, and Atlas Chiropractic of Waite Park. In studio with me, I have Dennis Fuchs, Administrator with the Stearns County Soil and Water Conservation District. Also, we have Acting District Conservationist from NRCS. We have Terry Zapzalka with us. Good morning to both of you.
Good morning.
Dennis, saw you at the Rocks game last Wednesday.
Yeah, was that fun or what?
Oh, it was fun.
What a beautiful evening, too, and what a great summer activity, sitting out, watching a ball game, enjoying
with a
cold beer.
There you go.
I was a little disappointed they didn't have any 3rd Street brewery beer there, but, they had some Summit Saga, an IPA.
It's an IPA, of course.
Yeah, and that was very, very nice.
Yeah.
Enjoyed that. And good food, good company. Brad and Randy were out there working their magic, and it was fun.
I was trying to figure out what was the connection. How come you were out there?
My wife works at Thermotech Windows. They had the, what is that area called that we were hanging out? Sports?
That's the VIP section.
The VIP section.
No, that's the sports deck.
Yeah, the sports deck. Yeah, we got to hang out there with my wife's company and got to enjoy the evening. It was a lot of fun. I highly recommend if you don't have anything going on during the week and want to catch a great ball game, check their schedule and go out there. And Wednesday night is when you guys work it, right? Every Wednesday night?
No. This was just a one-time kind of promotional thing during the summer.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah.
How fortunate it was for me
to
be there at the same time you and Randy.
It was
were
also
there.
almost a gift from above. Almost, it was that good.
I'd have to agree, especially once I started drinking beer,
and everything looked much better.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes. Including us.
It was a beautiful, beautiful evening.
Yeah.
It sounds like this week is going to be really nice too. But we did see some more erosion out there after we had the big rain event here Sunday night, and Albany area got pounded again, and we had 4 inches reported in some areas. The golf course was flooded, and we saw some standing water coming in, and some of the gullies are starting to reappear a little bit. Even though areas where we haven't had that much rainfall, the crops are looking pretty good, and in other areas they're struggling a little bit with too much water. Mm. But, I wanted to visit a little bit, Brad, about some upcoming programs.
Well, can we get to know Terry first here?
Well,
can we
Terry,
start with that?
I'm sorry. I'm just so used to working so hard.
You just want to get right down to business. Yeah. So right down. We got to get talking about this.
Go ahead. I'm sorry about that.
I want to meet Terry. Terry Zapzalka. He's the Acting District Conservationist at NRCS, and so far filling in for our former Dave's position, right?
Correct. Yeah. Back April 6th, I started down here in Waite Park as Acting District Conservationist. Basically, what that means is I'm filling in for the previous person until a new person is hired for this position.
Why don't they just keep you on, Terry? Come on.
I keep bringing it up too. He's been a great acting district conservationist, and the official advertisement for the Waite Park District Conservationist position is released. So that was just...
So that position is now finally, since April 6th, It took the federal government that long to finally get that position open. So right now, the position is open for applications, which... I don't know if I'm going to be eligible, but I'm going to stick my hat in the...
You fight for it, Terry.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. Okay,
so
we'll do that.
Just trying to, get you fired up here. Terry, where are you from originally?
Originally from the Little Falls, Bolus area, so I'm just into Morrison County. Grew up on a farm there and actually still farm there. My brother and I bought the farm from my parents and raised corn, soybeans, hay, small grain, and about 220, 230 beef steers every year. So stay active with the farming and kind of like working in this position with USDA because I get to work with farmers, and that's what I'm used to doing. So it's
and that kind of shifted your liking for that into this position?
Correct. Well, actually, I'm originally a conservationist up at the NRCS office in Morrison County. Okay. So because I do have 15 years work experience, they wanted somebody with quite a bit of work experience to come down into a high workload county like Stearns County and fill this position temporarily until they...
So are you serving 2 duties then, or how's that work?
Well, no, actually right now, while I'm considered acting down here, the staff up in Little Falls is kind of taking over for me, and there's somebody else helping them out as needed up there too. But Sounds like I'll probably be going back up there in August, depending if I would get this position or not. So,
No, being in Morrison County and then shifting to here, acting as what you're doing here. Have you worked with Dennis before?
yeah, actually, I've worked down here as the acting district conservationist here a couple summers ago, so like 2 years ago.
So you know what to expect from
Yeah,
Dennis.
yeah, he's a little different.
Hey, why did you have to say that on the radio?
That's just our secret. So we're here to talk about getting rid of that erosion problem again.
Yeah, well, and we've seen plenty of that. And I guess before I get into that, I was just going to cover a couple of events coming up that some of your listeners might be interested in attending. One of them is at the University of Minnesota West Central Research Outreach Center at Morris, and they got a big tour going on this week, Friday, July 10th, and the registration opens at 7:30, and the tours begin at 8 o'clock. And I'm just going to quickly run through the tours. They got Tour 1. They're going to be looking at production management in wheat and small grain production. Doug Holen from the University of Minnesota is going to talk about doing that. And then they're going to have the rotational effects of cover crops after small grains. They're going to have Cheryl Reese from South Dakota State University talk about that. On Tour 2, they're going to have proactive pest management or wishful thinking, a presentation by Bruce Potter. He's always entertaining to listen to, and he's with the University of Minnesota Extension Southwest Research Outreach Center in Lamberton. And then Tour 2 also includes the what, when, where, and why of corn and soybean diseases. And with all the rains recently, we are seeing a few more diseases out there. If you're interested in what you're seeing in your crops, Dean Melvick with the University of Minnesota will be talking about that. So that's Tour 1, Tour 2, and then in Tour 3 is potassium management for corn and soybeans in west central Minnesota. That'll be Dan Kaiser giving that talk. And then nitrogen management within season applications. And that's one of the things we'll see. We'll probably see a little more yellowing in the corn with the areas that had too much rainfall. Some of that nitrogen may have leached through the root zone and it won't be available for the corn to take up. So Fabian Fernandez with the University of Minnesota will be talking about nitrogen management with in-season applications. Now, here's another talk that'll be going on. This is kind of a one-time presentation. This will be at the farm shop at 10:45, and that'll be Warren Formal talking about buffer strips, opportunity or setback. And along with that, Brad Carlson from the University of Minnesota Extension, they'll be talking about that. And there's some additional tours and presentations going on at the same time. They're going to talk about extending the season with day-neutral strawberries and low-tunnel system. They got a big horticultural program at the West Central Research and Outreach Center at Morris, and they're going to talk a little bit about that. Fertilizer from Wind, a tour of the renewable hydrogen and ammonia pilot plant. What they're doing there is using the Bobber Hosh. I may not have said that properly, but it's a process of taking wind energy and converting air into ammonia. And it takes a significant amount of energy to create ammonia from the nitrogen in the air. And they're doing that at Morris with their wind energy, which I think is a fantastic use of wind energy. Pest and Disease Clinic, bring in your weeds or diseased plants for identification. That's all going on.
It's all Friday.
Yeah. July 10th. And a lot of times they get you wrapped up and out of there by noon, so you don't have to spend the whole day there. And it's that's why I think they started early, 7:30 a.m. Tours begin at 8 a.m. And I've been out to Morris for this field day. They really do a nice job with it. They got their facility looking fantastic, and the weather forecast for Friday still looks like it's going to be nice, not hot and humid, just perfect.
So you have to call ahead for this, or do you have to register? Or?
Yeah, when you get there, you register.
Okay.
So there's really because they don't do the lunch and stuff like that. They'll probably have coffee and cookie and donuts there and some water, and you just need to get there at 7:30 and get registered. And even if you don't get there, say, hey, I just want to hear a little bit more about buffer strips, and is that an opportunity or setback? I want to hear that Warren Formal talk. Well, then you get there at 10:45.
Dennis, I got to take a break in about 15 seconds, but where do you have to meet again for that? whole event?
That's going to be at the West Central Research and Outreach Center at the Morris Field Station right there. You'll see signs.
Okay, very good. We'll take a break.
Meow.
Yeah, we'll talk more with Dennis Fuchs and Terry Zapzalka as we get back from our break. It's 9:30 news time, Chasm Radio. And Midwest Machinery brought you your markets from Brownfield Ag Market News. And we continue with Answers Party Line today, visiting with Dennis Fuchs from the SWCD, Soil and Water Conservation District. And also we have acting District Conservationist from NRCS, Terry Zapzalka with us. Dennis, we continue the conversation.
All right. Well, that's great. I love talking to your listeners.
I'm sure you do.
Well, okay. So we were talking about there's a buffer presentation over at the University of Minnesota West Central Research and Outreach Center on Friday, July 10th at 10:45. We also are going to have another presentation, not exactly like that, but Warren Formo and Brad Carlson will be at this program. And that's the What You Need to Know put on by the Minnesota Corn Growers that's tomorrow. July 9th, and that's going to be at the Elmer Z Restaurant and Event Center in Sauk Center from 3 to 4 p.m. So it's just an hour long, and I will be at this talking about what the SWCD will be doing, and then talking a little bit about the buffers and a little bit more of the recent legislation approved by the state of Minnesota. And I'm going to just share with the listeners right now some of the things that I'll be discussing at the corn growers meeting tomorrow at Sauk Center at Elmer Z's from 3 to 4. I won't be talking for the full hour. It'll be probably 15 minutes to cover everything. But since I'm here and I've got some information hot off the press, I'm going to share that with your listeners. Is that all right, Brad?
You take it away, Dennis.
Okay. So this is put together by the Board of Water and Soil Resources, and that's our administrative agency for the Stearns County Soil and Water Conservation District. And that's a state agency. They are basically at the same level as the Minnesota Department of Agriculture, the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency, the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources. So they sit at that level and work under the governor. And some of the exemptions and no new requirement area activities, these are areas where there's going to be the buffer law will not influence these areas. And that's roads, trails, building structures. If you have crops that are underwater, areas that are seeded in alfalfa or other perennials, including the Conservation Reserve Program. If you got tile line insulation and maintenance that needs to be done, areas covered by a NPDS, a water quality permit, that's the non-point discharge and elimination system permit through MPCA, no fault clause to address acts of nature, and no permit/permission needed because you're working with the SWCD on a project. Note, this is in parentheses here, lawns, forests, hayed land, and other areas with perennial vegetation meet the buffer requirement already. So that means if you are a lakeshore resident and you have lawn up to the water's edge, you're meeting the buffer requirement.
So Dennis, if they have a sandy beach on their waterfront property on the lake, then does that mean that needs to be seeded down?
There's going to be additional guidance provided on that. My understanding is they're going to allow a certain area to be sand beach. And I haven't heard yet for sure what that width or distance is. Now, one of the things that legislators did do, they provided the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources over $600,000 to develop a map of where these buffers need to be. And that will be available sometime early next year. So the buffer protection maps will be created for public waters and public drainage systems subject to the required buffer. And that'll be coming out next year. And so we really need that to do a good job of some of the areas that'll be in question. Some of the intermittent streams. If you got a perennial stream that flows year-round, that we know probably already needs a buffer. So if you have something like that adjacent to your fields, we can work with you already. So let me just talk a little bit about the waters and what's covered and the widths that you need to install. Public waters are looking at a 50-foot average buffer width with a 30-foot minimum width. So if you bounce out to square up the field, say up to 100 feet in one spot, and you back her down to 30 feet in another spot to square up the field, the average has to be 50 feet with a minimum of 30. Public ditches, they got this down to 16.5-foot minimum width, or an alternative practice. And this applies to both public waters and public ditches. So the alternative practice might be no-till. So if you're in a no-till situation and or a strip crop, they might allow you to farm closer to the water course or the ditch. And that's something that you've heard us talk in the past about the water quality certification program. We're hoping that if a farmer is certified with the water quality certification program, that you'll be able to move into the area that needs to be buffered, because you're doing a good job of applying your nutrients, your pests, your manure, and then also managing your crop residues accordingly. Other waters determined by the SWCDs and adopted into water management plans to accomplish targeted voluntary or local regulatory measures. Now, we're still learning more about this. My understanding is if you have an impaired waters that's on the total maximum daily loads, and the phosphorus or sediment is one of the nutrients of concern, then we might be able to do some additional things on private ditches or intermittent streams. But there again, we don't really know what those other waters are until we get the map from the DNR. And that DNR will be working on that. They're probably working on it now. Now, as far as compliance, the Soil Water Conservation Districts will provide correction letters when non-compliance is identified. Now, the local/state can do a $500 administrative penalty order for public waters and ditches. And if I know the Soil Water Conservation District Board, the Board of Supervisors that I work for and that you elect, they probably will want to continue to be a non-regulatory local unit of government, and we'll work with either Stearns County Environmental Services Department or Randy Schreifel's Auditor's Department, or if they would rather have the state take care of that, then the Board of Water and Soil Resources would be assisting with the administrative penalty order for any of the areas that don't have the buffers installed. And the other thing that can happen is state program funds can be withheld for non-implementation. So if the county says, I'm not going to do anything, there's a chance that local government aid or some other type of state funds that comes into the county could be held back. Okay, moving on. Soil erosion, there's a local state enforcement with a $500 administrative penalty order. This is without a local ordinance. That means now that there's pretty much a statewide soil loss ordinance, and there would be no administrative penalty order issued if there's no cost share available. So what my understanding is, if there's this is a complaint-driven process. If a township road wipes out because of a rainfall event and there's a continuous problem, the township, a locally elected township official could make a complaint, and then the landowner would have to correct those soil loss problems with 50% cost share and technical assistance from our office, and we'd have to solve those problems. If the problem doesn't get solved, there could be an administrative penalty order of $500. And I don't know if that's hourly, weekly, monthly, or one-time shot. I think they left it open for the Board of Water and Soil Resources to have some flexibility there depending on how dramatic or large of a problem. Timeline, public ditch buffers that is not dependent on a redetermination trigger. In the past, you'd have to do a redetermination of ditch benefits before the 16.5-foot buffer requirement kicked in. That needs to be done sooner. Buffers need to be installed on public waters by November 2017. And so that's a couple years. And then on public drainage systems by November of 2018. Landowners who have applied for conservation programs or initiated a ditch authority process can be granted a 1-year extension. So if you're working with us on the continuous conservation reserve program to install a buffer along identified public drainage ditch, then you have a 1-year extension. How about the funding for the program? The legacies, the Clean Water Legacy Bill included clean water funds, which includes $5 million to the Board of Water and Soil Resources for local government implementation, and the $650,000 for mapping to the DNR. Now, what about landowner financial assistance? Drainage law can be used flexibly to provide and compensate for buffers. There's also the state Reinvest in Minnesota, also known as the RIM program. There's the buffer easements, and there was a certain amount of clean water funds set aside in the legacy bill for this. We also have the USDA Conservation Reserve Program, the continuous sign-up that I talked about earlier. And these are federal funds, and they'd be available to landowners that are impacted by the buffer bill. And then we also have a combination of the USDA and the state RIM program to put it in a more permanent type of easement. And those dollars are also from the state and the feds to help with the requirements. And then also the soil water conservation districts across the state of Minnesota are going to be receiving $100,000 from the Clean Water Legacy in 16 and another $100,000 in 17, and this will come out of the general fund in the future to help fund the capacity of the local soil water conservation districts throughout the state of Minnesota. And what they're trying to do is to get all of the soil water conservation districts up to the Stearns County SWCD's capacity. You know, we deliver a high level of technical and financial assistance across the county, and not every county is like that. And they would like to see additional support from the state, and they're getting it now to enhance the capacity. So there's a lot of stuff going on with this buffer program, and like I said, we are going to talk a little bit more about it tomorrow at the Minnesota Corn Grower What You Need to Know program, and that's at Elmer's Z Restaurant from 3 to 4. We'll be talking about buffers. I'll be talking about a little bit about what I just talked right now about, and then a little bit more about what soil water conservation districts do in general, and then some of the conservation programs available. And then they also are going to touch on ethanol's the outlook for the future for ethanol. I just want to quickly talk a little bit about, buffers are an important component of conservation planning when we work with a producer, but that's not going to be the cure-all to our problems out there. And I think that's one of the things that more informal with his organization, the Ag Water Resources, is going to talk about, because he's going to be talking about it on Friday too, opportunity or setback. What the primary, if you look at a pyramid, the buffers would be the top point of that. The base is soil health. We really need to work with landowners to make sure that they're doing crop rotations, leaving crop residues, managing their nutrients accordingly, their pesticides accordingly, and areas of concentrated flow that we have grass waterways installed. Because when you get a 4-inch rainfall event and you got a 50-foot buffer on a public water, that's not going to stop all this water coming through. You need to have that extended up into the field, and you need crop residue and a grass waterway to send that water flowing across your field safely into the public waters. And we're hoping that as we work with producers in helping them get in compliance with the new buffer rule, that we can also help them do additional things on their on their farm fields to do even a better job there. So that's the big thing here is we want to do a more whole farm conservation planning and not just the buffers.
Have you gotten a lot of feedback from farmers and participating?
Yeah, it's been all over the board.
Yeah.
Some folks haven't been too excited about it, and some folks are talking, that's not a bad idea. I think this is what some of us farmers needed to get it done. So I think we do have the range out there. And then there's a significant number of farmers that are already they've already got all this done.
Right.
So this will help us get to the ones that really need to do something, and then hopefully we can do more with these folks. Okay. Terry, what do you think?
Well, yeah, and another thing to talk about, Dennis mentioned briefly, is the programs that are available for farmers to install these buffers. They just need to stop into our office. We have probably 3 main programs that we work with this buffer, installing buffers. One of them is actually administered with our sister agency, the Farm Service Agency, and that's the Continuous Conservation Reserve Program, where farmers can install grassed areas up to 120 feet wide along public waters and drainage ditches. And these areas, the only thing with that program is those areas cannot be harvested when they're in that Conservation Reserve Program. It's kind of a set-aside program. I think a lot of producers are aware of that program because it's been around since 1985. But so if you're looking for some wildlife land, the nice aspect with that program is you get an annual payment every year from the USDA. So it's basically like the USDA is renting out your cropland, where you get an annual per acre payment. And I think in this county, depending on the soil type, you're looking at between $100 and $150 per acre, and possibly even more, depending on the soil types. And in addition, the USDA also reimburses them a certain percentage for the seeding and the planting of the buffer. So that's been a quite popular program just for people who wanted to do this a long time ago even. So we have several miles of buffers already established in the county, like Dennis mentioned. A couple of the other programs I want to talk about is the Conservation Stewardship Program, and that program also allows for widening existing buffers on the landscape on their farm, and they can get additional annual payments for that. And like Dennis mentioned, we need to look at upland treatment as well. So, some of the practices that farmers have been doing that are in that program are using low drift nozzles on their spraying systems to reduce any pesticide or herbicide drift. That helps protect with water quality. Using GPS in their spraying equipment minimizes overlap, reduces the amount of any overlap or extra herbicide or pesticide that's not needed out there. Using nitrification inhibitors, keeping the nitrogen close to the root zone in the cornfields, for example. There's actually even a practice called leaving standing grain over winter for wildlife, and that's kind of the wildlife aspect of that program. So that program, you're looking at an additional $20 to $30 per acre per year. That's a 5-year program. So there's more than just the buffer initiative or a buffer practice with that program. One of our other big programs in this county is the Environmental Quality Incentives Program. A producer can get up to, I think we pay around $200 per acre to establish buffers through that program. And also they can hay that buffer area, I think 2 times a year. And then, again, that program also has upland treatment practices, cover crops, erosion control if it's needed on any of the concentrated flow areas, installing grassed waterways, water and sediment control dams with drain tile. Our engineering staff can design pretty much anything you need out there. We work with you to make sure it fits your operation, fits your planter width, that we don't just come up with a plan and say that's what it's going to be. We work with you to make sure it fits exactly what you want out there. And, we've seen a lot of success with that. These practices really slow down the water. We design them to handle, some of these, at least a 10-year storm event. It seems like we're getting 50 to 100 to 1,000-year storm events here in some cases, but we're looking at maybe designing those for a little bit bigger rainfalls now because of such a frequent occurrence of those rainfalls happening here. So the last thing I wanted to touch on with the EQIP program is if you're looking at expanding or adding additional manure storage onto your farm, the EQIP program is really the only program out there for that. And, Stearns County being such a big dairy county and with the beef and the other livestock and even poultry for the dry manure out of the poultry barns, we do have conservation cost share payments for installing concrete manure storage areas, or if a lot of the dairies will do the earthen lagoons with the liners. So this is your main program for installing the egg waste systems on your farm. So get started early. If you're thinking about doing this, stop into our office at least a year in advance. It takes a lot of planning. There's some permitting with that, with the county. It's not something that can just happen overnight. So that if you're looking at doing that, and I know there's a lot of guys out there that are, I shouldn't say guys, but a lot of producers out there looking at adding additional manure storage, we're the place to come talk to. Most of us are farmers or grew up on a farm, so we all know what you're going through. Just stop into our office. We don't bite. Dennis does sometimes, I guess.
You gotta be careful with Dennis.
So, and so I just wanted to touch on a couple of our different programs that we have available. I tried tying in the buffer aspect that Dennis talked about with our programs, but a lot of our programs have a lot more than just the buffers. There are a lot of the upland treatment and other practices that we can do on the farm.
And I was just going to say, Terry, with the erosion that we have seen this spring and summer, those folks should probably be visiting with, if they're looking at EQIP to help solve that problem, they should probably be coming into the office now to look at solutions next year.
Right. Yeah. Our program funding it technically ends September 30th of each year. And so we want to really look, 6 months to a year ahead of time, just because we're going to have funding for 2016 coming in here this fall, and we want to get you on the list and go out, maybe as soon as the crops come off now, unless you have a hayfield out there where we can get out now. But a lot of times we have to wait until that September, October timeframe to get out in your field when the corn's chopped off or whatever, or the small grain. But we want to work with you, definitely ahead of time to try to come up with a plan, a good design, something, again, that's going to fit your operation, fit your farm equipment, and we want to make sure we want to get a plan in place before the funding is available. Let's put it that way. And we want to, make sure that we're here to help you. We're not a regulatory agency. We're here to help. Basically, our agency was founded on farmers helping farmers, and that's what we are. We've had some training and some education on how these things work. So we want to come out to your farm and help you.
All right. Final comment, Dennis.
I was just going to say that we do have some state funds available if you want to pursue erosion control. Not a lot of funds, but if you got a humongous gully and it's like, oh my God, I'm going to lose the combine in there, we can help you more quickly. But we do work with Terry and try to use the EQIP funds. Those are federal dollars, and we like to bring those to Stearns County if we can. And then just to remind your listeners, tomorrow I'll be at the Minnesota Corn Growers What You Need to Know talk presentation at 3 o'clock, Elmer Z. Sauk Center.
All right. Dennis Fuchs, SWCD, Terry Zapzalka, NRCS. Thanks for your time today.
Thank you.
Got some news coming up next, Chasm Radio.